Hello and welcome to StratNews Global. I'm Surya Gangadharan. One of the mysteries about the current standoff with China in Ladakh is the role of President Xi Jinping. Has he actually orchestrated all these events? Since he heads the Central Military Commission and the military is directly responsible to him, has he in fact pushed the envelope with India and created this situation to nobody's liking? I have with me Jayadeva Ranade. He needs no introduction. He's a China scholar. He's lived and worked in China, and he also runs a think tank on China. Mr. Ranade, what is your sense? Is Xi Jinping the guy who has orchestrated this entire standoff in Ladakh?
He would certainly have been involved in from the initial stages in the planning of this operation and later on the manner in which it is being conducted. Let's not forget that, as you pointed out, he is the chairman of the Central Military Commission. Such an action or such an operation, if I may call it, would not have been possible without the clearance from the Central Military Commission because it involved troops from other theatre commands also. And Xi Jinping also, from April 2016, has been the commander-in-chief of the Joint Operations Command. Which means that in times of war, he's the guy who's actually sitting and monitoring things, and giving directions. So he's certainly involved, and he's certainly, in fact, my hunch is that he's in fact the architect of this particular operation.
So the next question, the next most obvious question, why has he done this? What does he hope to gain?
Well, he's got a couple of things on his agenda. The first is he has been pursuing a more assertive and aggressive foreign policy. But with India, it has been a more aggressive border policy. And we can see that since his taking over in November 2012, we have seen more intrusions, deeper intrusions, and of a longer duration. Starting with just days before the Chinese Premier Li Keqiang was to come to India on his first visit as Premier. That was in April 2013. Since then, there have been a series of incursions, including, in fact, when Xi Jinping was visiting India. So he has certainly pursued that policy. The second is what he unveiled during the 18th Party Congress in 2012 about the China Dream, which is a recovery of all the territories that China feels were its own. And Arunachal, J&K, or Ladakh were part of it. So I think this would be a bid by him to try and show that, especially at a time when the people feel that he's losing his grasp, or the leadership is losing its grasp on this great ambition of rejuvenation of the great Chinese nation, with Hong Kong having problems, with Taiwan now having said they don't accept the one country, two systems, with their problem in Japan being unsettled. So I think this was part of his agenda, and it certainly has been planned and thought over for quite some time. I wouldn't be surprised if the planning started in 2018 or so.
So you're telling me that despite two informal summits and scores of other meetings with Narendra Modi, this is what Xi Jinping has been working towards?
Well, I would say that the relationship itself between India and China has not been very good. To my reckoning, it has been on a sliding downward, and that was one factor. The second is that since 2018-19, in the Chinese military writings, we have been seeing an increase in references to training in the Tibetan plateau by the PLA, and increased references to India as being the objective or the target for their training, the reason for their training. They also include references to Pakistan and how they're going to strengthen Pakistan. So all this leads me to believe that certainly since 2018-19, the planning was already on. Whether the decision as to when to carry it out, of course, would have been taken later. But certainly before COVID struck, which would be, again, as you know, around late last year.
Mm-hmm. So what you're telling me is Xi Jinping has been involved in subterfuge and deceit, while at the same time, making nice with Narendra Modi.
Yes, it certainly appears that way. And I'm not surprised because the Chinese are quite adept at camouflage, deception, and deceit.
But at the highest level, Mr. Ranade, this is at the level of the chairman of the Communist Party. At that level, they come down to this.
Well, no one else could have authorized such an operation. It is a major operation, and today I think there are over 40,000 troops, or that's what the estimates are. They have been drawn in from different places. It has happened at a time when the whole world is looking at China. Now, certainly, the whole world is looking at what's happening on the LAC. So it is a decision that no one less than a chairman of the military commission could have taken. And the manner in which Xi Jinping has tightened his grip on the PLA, any reports that suggest that some PLA commanders thought of this on their own is not tenable.
Now, we are also hearing reports that the way the standoff has gone forward. We had the attack on our personnel and the retaliation that followed from our side, and we hear that many Chinese soldiers have been killed or injured. Numbers, of course, are not clear. But in that sense, does it suggest that perhaps for all the planning that the Chinese did, they didn't factor in this kind of retaliation from India?
I think there are two factors here, Surya. One, that they didn't think that we would stand firm. They thought we'd back down or we'd plead for negotiations. Luckily, we haven't done either. The second, I think, is the fact that they have not really been engaged in battle since 1979, which is Sino-Vietnam conflict. And that too, it was against an inferior army in the terms of size, I mean. Here, they're taking on a battle-hardened army, which is mountain trained, mountain warfare trained. They've been fighting right through. I mean, through the counter-terror operations in J&K with Pakistan, Bangladesh, etc. So they're taking on a different kind of a force here. And what happened at Galwan, we were, I think, at a disadvantage because we didn't have any weapons, but we gave a very good account of ourselves, stirring up to some extent, I think, a debate inside China, maybe subdued debate, muted debate, but debate inside China that if the Indians can honor their dead, with the national flag on the coffin, etc., why can't we? So there have been some voices raised. But yes, this is how I would rate it, that they have suffered this. At the most, I think this would give the higher Chinese military command pause for thought as to what should be their next steps, because India doesn't seem to be yielding ground at all.
So what do you think would happen now? Do you think Xi Jinping is prepared for maybe some kind of a limited conflict with India, if only to save face?
I think that's a very important point you made, because the recent statements after 6, 7 that I've seen, they're quite tough. The question, of course, depends on what they really want to do. Xi Jinping himself is I think, in a difficult situation. He's the one who started this, but he has been under fire within the Chinese Communist Party and inside China. If he is not able to show that he's had a victory, then he will. The criticism will mount. His own reputation will be sullied. But at the same time, as far as we are concerned, we don't have to look for a victory. If we just give him a bloody nose, we hold on. That's a defeat for him. So he's in a difficult situation. The question is, how will he try and get out of it? And here, I would just make one remark, that negotiations are fine, discussions are fine, but if people advise us to see that he doesn't lose face and therefore engage in some kind of a compromise, I don't think we should do that at all. Because for us, this is a very important and crucial juncture at which this is happening.
Again, I come back to that thing of a limited war. Would you see Xi Jinping as perhaps ready to cross that Rubicon, given his current situation? Country recovering from coronavirus and all that. There's an economic downturn too. Would he be prepared to go this extra mile? It's a huge risk.
It's a huge risk. It also depends on the extent of criticism that he's being subjected to. I mean, we only get some idea, but we really don't know what the extent is. There are reports, fairly credible reports of his security having been beefed up and things like that, but one really doesn't know. So if he's under considerable fire at home, he might risk an open conflict on the border here, thinking that he has more to gain if he wins. A lot also depends on the confidence that he's been given by his own military commanders. But you know the old tale that no one wants to be the messenger of bad news.
Yeah, yeah. There is a lot of talk going around that India's use of the Special Frontier Force has, in a sense, given the Chinese pause to question whether India is now re-evaluating its One China policy. Do you think is that how things are being read, possibly on the other side?
I think what the late Ms. Sushma Swaraj said to the Chinese foreign minister when he met her, that you follow a one India policy and we will follow a one China policy, I think that should be operationalized right now instead of just paying lip service to it. So on this Tibet issue, I would say that yes, the fact that we actually acknowledged the involvement of the Special Frontier Force, and that a member of the ruling party went actually to the, and Indian Army officers went to the funeral ceremony in Leh recently. It was publicized, does mean that we are acknowledging the presence of and the contribution of the Tibetans in this fight. The second point I'd make is that here, with the Tibetans fighting here, I think there is a subliminal message that should go across and probably would have gone across by now to Tibetans inside Tibet, that their brethren are, in a manner of speaking, fighting for their freedom. So I think these are things that should cause some nervousness in the leadership in China. I think they're already a bit nervous because let's not forget, I think there were about 3 or 4 Politburo Standing Committee members who'd visited Tibet just before this. Yeah. And the Minister, Wang Yi, went there. It was mid-June. I think he went there to brief the Tibetan leadership on the international situation, etc. And he visited the border areas. So there would be some concern that the Tibetans may try and disrupt their logistic supply lines, etc. I'm just speculating now, but I think that would be reasonable.
Do you believe Xi Jinping may have lost ground internally within the party?
He has lost ground, there's no doubt about it. He has been on the back foot primarily because of what the Americans, the pressure that the Americans have put on him, economic and otherwise. And I think the manner in which the Americans have targeted the Chinese Communist Party would have shaken the entire system there. Firstly, they're saying that all party officials who have manipulated, who have been actually actively involved in formulation of policies or in implementation of policies to repress people in Xinjiang and in Hong Kong would be sanctioned. So, as you know, the Hong Kong chief executive, Carrie Lam, her son had to cut short his doctoral studies and come back to Hong Kong. There are others who stashed a lot of money abroad in America, in Australia, in Canada, etc. They're all now vulnerable. I think that has shaken the system. The second was the proposal that Mike Pompeo announced. They haven't yet implemented it, saying that they will ban US visas or not give US visas to any member of a Chinese Communist Party. That immediately affects, say there are 92 million members, and it would immediately affect their immediate family, which is close to 150 odd people, 300 million people. But more important, I think, is that almost 70% of those at the level of departmental head and above in the Chinese Communist Party have their kids studying abroad in the United States or elsewhere. So they're going to be in a quandary as to what to do. And I think all this would have added up to increase the pressure on Xi Jinping.
So, do you expect he will retaliate by perhaps launching another anti-corruption drive, some kind of purge within?
He has already done it. In the last 2 months, he has launched, or rather unleashed, I would say, 6 major nationwide campaigns to bolster the people's ideological commitment, their loyalty to the party, etc. And he has unleashed a major, what they call rectification. It's actually like a purge of the security apparatus, which includes, mind you, their judiciary and their courts. So he's already done it in a bid to not only legitimize but strengthen the Chinese Communist Party and its, see that its members don't waver in the face of this pressure, but in way also to bolster his own position.
And do you see any rivals within the party right now? Li Keqiang, perhaps? Is he a rival, a credible rival?
I don't think he'd be a credible rival. I think, the way I see it, if the opposition to Xi Jinping within the party, and it has to come actually from within the party, from the party elders, etc., once they decide that things are getting too serious, too critical, that is the time they will lean on Xi Jinping. And he has to then decide whether he will fight back or not. His own character is not one that will succumb. I mean, he's the type who will fight back. But they might present him with a choice. They might say that, look, when your term finishes, step down. Otherwise, the party's monopoly on power will be at stake. So that in that condition, he might just step down. But till that critical mass is reached, I think Xi Jinping will continue. I don't see any strong rival emerging as yet.
Do you sense any discontent within the military about the manner in which this entire confrontation has been handled? And perhaps they could be, pointing the finger at the commanders whom owe their loyalty to Xi Jinping.
I haven't seen any such indication. And I think Xi Jinping has been so ruthless and effective in, weeding out disloyal elements. And he has been carrying out these successive campaigns in the PLA where they swear absolute loyalty to the party, that I don't see such sign. There may be, of course, but I don't think we are seeing any such sign at any level which merits, shall I say, a particular attention. So I think he has got things firmly under control. Same thing he has done in the party. So we're not seeing, and if there are voices, which there certainly are, because he keeps weeding out people, they're not yet at that level where they would pose a direct challenge to him. The operative word being direct challenge.
How would you see this entire standoff being resolved? Do you think there's any resolution we could hope for? What kind could that take?
I think we have to be prepared for a very protracted standoff and negotiations. It's not going to be easy. Both have a lot to stake. Both sides have a lot at stake. I've just given you my reasoning of why Xi Jinping cannot really afford to withdraw without losing face there. In India also, the matter is very serious. We understand how important it is for India in its international relations as well as its domestic policy for it to stand up. We also have a very strong leader, a nationalist, like Xi Jinping is. So I don't see either of them yielding ground in terms of territory or sovereignty and backing off. So they'll have to find some via media. Diplomats will have to work, creatively and hard. But it seems to be difficult. And the language coming out of Beijing in the last couple of days is fairly tough.
Mhm. So anything could happen on the ground, frankly, in your opinion?
Yeah, anything could happen. I think, but from all that one sees, our people are ready, and they have the latest reports indicate that we are also, taking necessary preemptive steps. So anything is possible, and I think that is the way we should be. We should be prepared for the worst. We can hope for the best, of course.
Jayadeva Ranade, as always, a pleasure talking to you. Great insight. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much.